So, let me start off today with a pretty simple question for you. Have you ever been, like, absolutely 100% sure about something and then realized you were just completely wrong?
Oh, yeah, like, totally wrong.
Right. I'm talking about those deeply humbling moments, like um, when you confidently wave back at someone across the street,
Huh.
only to realize, oh, wait, they were waving at the person standing right behind you.
Oh, that is the worst. Or, when you just stride with absolute purpose, full of confidence, directly into a perfectly clean glass door.
Yes. Oh man, we have all been there. It's hilarious, but it's also a slightly bruised reminder that our natural vision has limits.
It really does. I mean, we misread our environment constantly.
We do. But today, we're taking that everyday concept and going like way deeper. We are looking at some really fascinating notes from a teaching by Pastor Mark. It's called Seeing Tomorrow Through Faith.
Right. And what's so compelling about this material is how it connects those everyday physical vision problems to a much bigger issue.
Exactly. It's our mission today to explore how our fundamental perception of reality dictates how we respond to fear and, uncertainty and the unknown in our lives.
Yeah, it's a critical connection to make because those funny moments we just mentioned, the imaginary waving, the glass doors, they actually highlight a vulnerability in the human operating
A
system.
vulnerability. How so?
Well, when our vision is limited or like our data is incomplete, we don't just get embarrassed. Our default mechanism is actually to panic. We just assume the worst possible outcome.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So this deep dive is going to explore a specific historical narrative where a vision problem wasn't about physical eyesight at all. It was about faith. It was about what we allow to dictate our reality.
So let's jump right into it.
Yeah?
The source notes take us to an ancient geopolitical conflict where misreading reality led to literal life and death panic.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense story.
It really is. Yeah. It takes place in the ancient Middle East, specifically in the biblical book of 2 Kings. And the setup, honestly, it reads like a high-stakes political thriller.
It totally does. You've got the king of Aram, and he's at war with Israel.
Right. And he's running this sophisticated military campaign, setting up all these secret ambushes. But every single time he sets a trap, the Israelite army mysteriously avoids it.
Which is wild. So naturally, the king assumes there is a highly placed mullah in his inner circle.
Yeah, and the king is furious, demanding to know who the traitor is.
Which is, I mean, the only logical conclusion for a military commander. If your top secret locations are being consistently leaked, you
Huh.
hunt for the traitor.
Exactly. But his officers come to him with this completely wild report. They tell him, um, there is no traitor. The intelligence leak is actually coming from a single man,
Elisha.
right? Elisha, an Israelite prophet. And the notes we're looking at point out that this isn't standard espionage, it's revelation.
Yeah, it's not like he has spies everywhere.
No. The officers claim Elisha somehow knows the very words the king whispers in his own highly secure private bedroom.
Which is terrifying if you're the king.
Right. So the king decides to just cut the head off the snake. He finds out Elisha is staying in a small city called Dothan.
And he doesn't mess around. He sends a massive elite force of horses and chariots by night to completely surround the city.
A massive force just for one guy.
Yeah, it's a textbook siege strategy. You isolate the target under the cover of darkness, you cut off all the escape routes, and you just wait for sunrise.
So morning comes, Elisha's servant wakes up, stretches, probably just expecting, a completely normal day.
Poor guy has no idea.
None at all. He walks outside, looks over the city wall, and sees this massive, heavily armed enemy military force completely encircling them.
And he absolutely loses his mind.
Completely loses it. He runs back to Elisha and cries out, "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?"
Yeah, which in modern terms is essentially screaming, "We are dead, it's over, I knew I should stayed in bed today."
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I read this scenario in the notes, and I honestly have to defend the servant here.
Oh, you're on his side.
100%. If I pour my morning coffee, look out the window, and see a heavily armed elite military unit surrounding my house, my adrenaline spiking isn't a lack of faith.
Right.
It's a correct biological response.
Right.
Like that is a survival instinct keeping me alive.
Mm.
So how is the servant actually supposed to be wrong in this scenario?
Well, what's fascinating here is that he isn't wrong about what he is seeing. That's the crucial nuance in this teaching.
Okay.
The servant's panic was entirely logical based on the data his physical eyes were feeding to his brain.
So his logic was sound.
Right. The problem wasn't his logic. The problem was his data set. It was
Mm.
just incomplete.
Oh, I see.
The core argument presented in this narrative is that fear is what happens when we only possess partial vision.
So he is calculating the odds correctly based on the only variables he can see.
Precisely. He saw the enemy army, but he didn't see God. He saw the immediate danger, but not the deliverance.
Which is such a human thing to do.
It is. And if we connect this to the listener's life right now, the parallel is uncomfortable, but it's really accurate.
Yeah.
Like, we look at the medical diagnosis, but we don't perceive the healer. Or we stare at the mounting stack of bills on the kitchen table, but we don't see the provider.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that hits close to home.
It does. We see the sheer uncertainty of a situation, but not the overarching sovereignty managing it. Whenever the human brain cannot fully interpret what it's looking at, fear just automatically rushes in to fill that gap.
Fear fills the gap created by partial vision. That is a really brilliant way to frame
It
it.
explains a lot about our anxiety, doesn't it?
It totally does. So if fear is the symptom of an incomplete data set, the question becomes, like, how do you fix the hardware? Because Elisha's reaction is the polar opposite of his servant's.
Yeah, Elisha's entirely unbothered.
Right. Elisha doesn't start barricading the door. He doesn't panic. He just tries to this terrified young man and calmly says, don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them.
A statement that, mathematically and physically speaking, appears completely unhinged.
It sounds like pure denial.
Hey.
I mean, put yourself in the servant's shoes for a second. You are staring down thousands of weapons pointed directly at you, and your mentor says, relax, we outnumber them.
Yeah, you're probably respectfully wondering when he last visited the optician.
Right. You're counting the soldiers again, thinking, sir, are you having a psychological break? To natural ears, this faith language sounds like a man just refusing to accept reality.
It really does sound crazy.
So does this concept of faith just boil down to, like, toxic positivity? Just ignore the bad stuff and pretend it's fine.
Well, that is the assumption many people make, but it fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of faith, as described in Pastor Mark's notes.
Okay, how so?
Faith, according to the text, does not deny reality. It reveals a greater reality.
Greater reality.
Exactly. Elisha wasn't practicing toxic positivity. He wasn't ignoring the heavily armed Aramean army at the gates. He wasn't pretending they were just friendly visitors.
He knew they were there to kill him.
Right. He was simply operating with a completely different, vastly expanded set of visual data. He was seeing beyond the immediate physical threat.
You know, it makes me think of looking into a pitch-black forest at night.
Okay, yeah.
With my naked eye, I see absolutely nothing but darkness and shadows.
Mm-hmm.
But if I put on an infrared camera, suddenly I can see the bright red heat signature of a massive bear standing 50 feet away.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
The bear was always there. The reality didn't change at all. I just didn't have the required hardware to perceive it.
That is an excellent analogy. And that hardware upgrade is exactly what happens next in the narrative.
What does Elisha do?
Well, Elisha doesn't argue with his servant. He doesn't, try to explain the complex mathematics of the unseen realm. He just prays a very simple, targeted prayer.
He says, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see.
Yes. And the moment that happens, the servant's perceptual hardware is upgraded. He looks out at the exact same hills, but now he sees they are completely full of horses and chariots of fire surrounding Elisha.
Wait, so the turning point of this entire crisis had absolutely nothing to do with the physical circumstances changing.
Not a single physical variable shifted.
That is wild.
The Aramean army was still there. The weapons were still drawn. The flaming chariots didn't suddenly fall from heaven at the exact second Elisha prayed.
They were already there.
Yes, God's army was already stationed on those hills, completely unseen. The servant just hadn't been able to perceive the heat signature, to use your metaphor.
Wow.
The narrative defines faith here not as wishful thinking, but as actual spiritual sight. It's recognizing that the invisible realm is just as real as the visible one.
So it's about seeing presence when your physical senses tell you that you were entirely alone.
Exactly.
Okay, so if that's how spiritual sight works in physical space,
Mm.
what are the implications for time?
That is where the notes pivot in a really fascinating way.
Yeah, because seeing invisible chariots on a hillside is a great spatial miracle. But the teaching applies this concept to time, specifically our fear of the future.
Which is huge because time is the ultimate blind spot for us.
Right. If there is one thing none of us have the hardware to see, it's tomorrow.
We are linear creatures. We can only experience life sequentially, just second by second.
And that sequential experience is terrifying. The notes outline this internal monologue of anxiety we all suffer from, like, what if this project fails? What if the economy crashes? What if the test results are bad?
Yeah, the future brings worry because we can't physically see it.
Exactly. We are essentially that servant on the wall, staring into the dark, projecting our worst fears onto the blank canvas of tomorrow.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the profound reframe offered here is a complete redefinition of the future itself.
How so?
Well, the future is only a void to us. It is only unknown to human perception. It is not unknown to God.
Right, because God exists outside of time.
Exactly. The framework in the notes presents a calm, seated, sovereign God. He is not surprised by your tomorrow because he is already inhabiting it.
I love that. There is this brilliant, really humorous image from the source text to make this memorable.
Oh, the one about Gabriel?
Yes. The pastor points out that God is not pacing around heaven nervously saying, Gabriel, come here. Look at this mess. I completely missed this. I really hope this works out.
We laugh at that, but it exposes a deep habit we have. We constantly project our own temporal anxiety onto God.
We totally do.
We assume that because we are stressed and uncertain about Thursday, God must also be furiously calculating contingencies for Thursday.
Right, like he's scrambling to fix it.
But the takeaway here is that humans are constantly stressed about things that haven't even happened yet, while true faith sees provision before it appears.
Before it appears.
Think about the chariots of fire on the hills of Dothan. They were already deployed,
So the prayer didn't create the provision, it merely revealed what was already stationed there.
which means we often fall into a trap. We spend our energy desperately asking God to do something new when He is just asking us to see something that is already there.
Wow. The provision, the protection, it already exists in the unseen tomorrow.
It does. It really flips the entire script on how we handle anxiety.
It really does. But we can't leave the story of Dothan just yet because there is this external strategy that happens next, and it's totally wild.
Oh, you mean the paradox with the army?
Yes. So the servant has this beautiful internal revelation. He sees the chariots of fire. He is finally at peace. But the physical army of Aram is still standing at the gates.
Right, the physical threat hasn't moved.
So Elisha prays for God to open his servant's eyes. And then immediately he turns around and prays for God to strike the enemy army with blindness.
It's quite the contrast.
So what does this all mean? Why this specific double-sided use of vision as a weapon?
Well, it's a masterful strategy when you break it down. Spiritual blindness is presented as a severe problem for the servant,
Like it caused his panic.
but it becomes the ultimate tactical weapon against the enemy. By stripping the Aramean army of their vision, Elisha neutralizes their physical superiority completely.
He didn't even have to draw a sword.
Not a single one. Think about what blindness does in a military context. It causes total disorientation. It induces panic.
Yeah, a soldier who can't see his target is effectively useless.
Exactly, no matter how sharp his sword is. And when the believer's eyes are opened, the enemy loses their advantage.
So clear vision is essentially the ultimate neutralizing force against external threats.
Clear vision outmaneuvers confusion. When you see the reality of God's provision, you don't necessarily have to engage in exhausting, hand-to-hand combat with every obstacle in your life.
Because your clarity itself is the strategic advantage.
Right. The external threats lose their leverage over you. In the actual historical account, Elisha literally leads the blinded enemy army away from the city like a flock of sheep.
He didn't fight them. He just outsaw them.
He outsaw them. I love that phrasing.
So if outseeing the enemy is the ultimate strategy, this brings the whole ancient story right into the modern listener's lap.
It really does.
Because if someone is listening right now and they are, paralyzed by a medical scare or facing a financial crisis, how do they actually get this sight? How do they get the infrared camera?
The source material is great here because it doesn't leave this as a purely abstract concept. It provides a practical toolkit for upgrading your daily vision.
Let's run through those 4 steps real quick. The first one is pretty straightforward. Pray for it intentionally.
Right, just asking, help me see the situation the way you do.
And taking a moment to acknowledge that your initial panic might be based on incomplete data.
Yeah.
But the second habit is where it gets really challenging. The text says to feed your faith, not your fear.
Yeah, this one is huge. The notes explicitly call out our consumption habits, the news cycles, the endless scrolling, the negativity.
It's so true. If fear is the result of partial vision, then consuming a relentless diet of negativity is essentially choosing to put blinders on yourself.
You are voluntarily restricting your data set to only the most threatening variables. You are actively training your brain to only scan for the Aramean army.
And guaranteeing that you'll never see the chariots of fire. The third step is about proximity. Stay close to God's voice.
Elisha's intimacy produced his insight. If you want to know what someone is doing, you stay close to them.
Makes perfect sense. And the fourth step is about how our brains process time. It's simply remember past faithfulness.
This is where memory acts as a tool for future vision.
Oh, I look at that.
Yeah, when you are faced with a new threat, your brain instinctively searches its archives for relevant data to predict the outcome.
So if your archive is just full of fears, you project failure.
Exactly. But if you intentionally curate your memory, if you actively recall the specific times you were delivered, the times provision showed up, you give your brain a different data set.
You stop projecting a catastrophic future and start projecting confidence. Which brings up my absolute favorite analogy from the entire document.
The night vision goggles.
Yes, comparing faith to night vision goggles. It's so perfect.
It really is, because we need to be clear about what night vision technology actually does, and more importantly, what it doesn't do.
Right. They don't flip a switch and turn midnight into high noon.
Exactly. The darkness remains entirely intact. Faith doesn't instantly delete your problems. It doesn't magically make the terrifying night go away.
The environment doesn't change.
But what changes is your capacity to navigate straight through it. You are still walking through the dark, but you are no longer blind while doing it.
You have the specific ability to see the path and to see the protection hidden in the shadows.
And based on that, the text directly challenges you, the listener. It asks, where have you assumed defeat way too early?
Not the heavy question.
Where are you letting fear define your future just because you are standing in the dark? Are you surrendering to the threats you can see with your naked eye, instead of using the upgrade to see the promises?
Where have I assumed defeat just because the lights went out? That is a thought to sit with. And as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's recap the most mind-bending perspective shift of the whole thing.
The ultimate flip.
The ultimate flip. Think back to the beginning. The servant woke up, looked around, and thought he was surrounded by the enemy.
But his perception was backwards.
Entirely backwards. When his eyes were opened, the true reality was that the enemy was actually surrounded by God.
Yeah.
And we want you to let that sink in. Whatever problems, whatever pressure or uncertainty feels like it's surrounding you right now, God has already surrounded what is trying to surround you.
You are not unprotected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know you had a final provocative thought you want to leave everyone with, building on all this.
I do. We spent a lot of time on Elisha praying for his servant's eyes to be opened. But notice what is absent from the text. Elisha didn't actually need to pray for his own eyes to be opened.
Oh, right. He didn't ask for a miracle for himself.
No. Why? Because, as we saw earlier, Elisha was already the guy who could hear whispers in a faraway bedroom. He was already deeply attuned to the unseen.
He already had the habit.
Exactly. So consider this. What if the real miracle isn't suddenly seeing flaming chariots in a moment of crisis? What if the greater miracle is cultivating such a quiet, daily habit of listening to the invisible that you don't even need to see the fire to know you're protected?
Oh, wow.
How might changing your daily listening habits permanently upgrade your night vision?
If we can learn to hear the unseen before the crisis hits, we stop panicking at shadows. We stop walking face first into glass doors. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.